They are off.
Are we off to the races? Got a lump, bum, bum. What does this look like? Oh, we already have people in the room. I'm a little slow this morning. It's kind of early still.
Yeah, I thought we were going to go to the store and do a little shopping today and then come back and do it live in the afternoon, but things didn't work out that way, guys. It is crazy out there. Let me know if you guys can see and hear us. Hey, Robbie.
Hey, Robbie. Yeah, a sound check, sound check. Benzomatic. Hola.
Catch Many 95. Christine, love what you said. Feels just right. Rosalie Eduardo, Scott Shuhatz, good to see you guys all again. Jazz Nose, Regina Kellum, awesome. Good morning, guys.
Okay, so can see and hear. Okay, I guess that's a go. Yes and yes.
Awesome. Yeah, it's there's a lot of this is very weird. Again, what we're waking up to appears to have been some sort of surgical strike. Feel free. Good to see you this morning. I was looking at the live that the Polish psychic did yesterday, and he's got something in the middle of his live that, just seems so much bigger than even what we're watching now, although this is very big. This is big. This is a different stage. And Cindy's going to end up sharing what she's picking up on it. But let's look at what we're talking about. This is the Patriot Voice. Says, I'm pretty damn positive we just went to war with Venezuela. Well, maybe the war is over, or maybe it hasn't started yet. But anyway, without any congressional approval, there was a surgical strike in Venezuela that seems to have been wildly successful, in that they have captured Maduro, according to reports. And, this is also being confirmed. Like, if we go over to RT, and I like to look at RT because this is the Russian side of things. Maybe you could view it as the BRICS side of things as opposed to the NATO side of things. And here you go. Maduro indicted in New York. U.S. Attorney General states. The charges include narcotics trafficking and weapons possession. And, this is just kind of wild that they went in the middle of the night and snatched Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And they've already been indicted in New York on several charges related to drug trafficking and weapons possession. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has said. On Saturday, the U.S. military conducted strikes on Venezuela. President Donald Trump later announced that Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, had been captured and flown out of the country. Caracas has denounced the strikes as grave military aggression. In a statement on X, Bondi said Maduro and his spouse had been indicted in the Southern District of New York and charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. Maduro and his wife have yet to deliver their pleas. This is a leader of another country entirely that has been snatched up, taken away, and is now going to face charges in the U.S. Has this happened before? It has. Manuel Noriega, if you forget, Panama. There is precedence for this. Manuel Noriega, you can see him here with his little U.S. Marshal, Miami, Florida. He was the president of Panama from 83 to 89. I remember this. 83, I graduated. He never officially served as president of Panama, instead ruling as an unelected military dictator through puppet presidents, amassing a personal fortune through drug trafficking operations by the Panamanian military. He had long-standing ties with American intelligence agencies before the invasion of Panama removed him from power. So, and he literally did stand trial 88 was indicted by federal grand juries in Miami and Tampa on charges of racketeering, drug smuggling, money laundering, and the U.S. launched an invasion of Panama following failed negotiations seeking his resignation and Noriega's annulment of the 1989 Panamanian general election. He was captured, flown to the U.S., tried on a Miami indictment, convicted on most of the charges, sentenced to 40 years in prison. Served 17 years. After a reduction in his sentence for good behavior, he was extradited to France, where he was convicted and sentenced to 7 more years of imprisonment for money laundering. Then France extradited him to Panama, where he was again arrested, incarcerated for crimes committed during his rule. And then he had been diagnosed with a brain tumor in 2017, suffered complications during surgery, and died. Okay, yeah. So, what do you guys make of all this, knowing that there is precedence for this? Good to see you, JW. Good to see you, Mary. JW, I'd love to have your take. I wish we were interviewing you right now on what you make of all this. This would be absolutely fascinating to hear. Wild day already. Yes, absolutely. Rasta Bear in the house. Elizabeth Towers, good to see you.
Awesome. I know. It's Happy New Year to you too, JW. Now, today we're going to talk about a Varshafala chart, and that is the solar year of the United States. 2026. You normally would do it on people, but I thought, heck, what you can do on people, you can do on the United States. And what that gives you, it gives you sensitive points. It gives you an understanding of these pressure points, these moments in time, and what the theme is going to be for the year. So they talk about these saham, and what saham means is basically a moment in time. So we have these scores where there's scores. If it's a low score, the theme is likely not going to happen. If it's a high score, the theme, there's a lot of pressure there. So it does open a door to events. And there's some pretty big events in the United States where that score is quite high. And I'm going to go over what those themes are, how high the score is, and how we can navigate it. It's basically, you're looking at a minefield this year, and it's how do we navigate that minefield? So that's the information I want to give.
Yeah, so we'll give some insights as we go through all this. First, catch you guys up with everything that's happening right now. We are blessed to have such a diversified group here. So, as you could see, there was a lot of chaos, but it was surgical, pretty much organized chaos. And when you think about it, how many times do we have wars? As you're looking at U.S. helicopters coming in, how many times do we have wars in which the leadership, the kings, right, if we want to go back to the days of kings and queens, which we still have them, they never pay any price, really, besides maybe losing a little authority and power. They don't pay the ultimate price. And, here what you have is it could be, things could have happened worse. Let me say that. Because the good thing is that we don't have a general war so far with Venezuela, as we've been saying the entire time. It's the average people of the world that tend to suffer. The average people of the world get pulled into these wars. They get drafted. Now, this might lead to people getting drafted down the line. This and other conflicts that are developing and have been going on at the same time. So don't get me wrong there. I'm for peace, and we recognize that what we have going on, as we were saying last night in the live we did on evolutionary, in many ways what we have going on is a war of different mafias, different sections of mafia fighting amongst themselves, because as we know, it's been declassified. If we're looking, we're able to see and recognize that most of the governments of the world are the bigger drug traffickers. And most of the governments of this world, I would say pretty much all the governments, have been pretty damn corrupt when you get down to it. And we're in a new age now. We are in a new era, a new time. Well, in the United States, at least, the one thing that I could say that we see that's positive is especially what's being done on the home health front. We see a lot of things coming from RFK Jr. that I think most of us in this particular family would view as positive, steps in the right direction, with people actually being able to take their health back and make their own decisions, instead of having your arm twisted. Here you see Venezuelan citizens heard screaming on the beach, Marines. They were very panicked and terrorized, and they've had this thought of a U.S. all-out invasion. That didn't happen. But they did go in and they did take, they took the king. They captured the king and brought it off the chessboard, so to speak. And again, I recognize that all this is still part of a dramatic act that we're watching. It is a play. It is a drama. Yeah, at the same time, I view it could have been worse, but this might initiate a much, much bigger war on multiple fronts. As you see here, people were going out and enjoying themselves when this was starting to occur. So out on Friday night, and then all sorts of chaos starts to ensue on the Capitol. Yeah, again, the Venezuelan people have suffered a lot when it comes to, again, the sanctions that were imposed, the blockades that were imposed by the U.S. And don't forget that, China and Russia have pledged support for Maduro and his regime. So this was a quick strike that circumvented really any sort of reprisal, any quick reprisal. But it doesn't mean reprisal is not coming. In fact, it probably is in some way, shape, or form.
I don't see how it cannot. This has been lined up for so long. What I do wish is I wish we had people like right there on the ground that could tell us exactly what's going on, because there's so much there's so much information out there that we have to, discernment has got to be one of the themes of the year. This doesn't look good, and we've been seeing this coming for a very long time, and I think the joke kind of is what they're accusing him of. Look at our medical system. It's not very nice. What do we do? Things like people go in for help, and the things that I'll just throw out there, Ozempic. It's not helping a lot of people, and that was already known, and they threw it out there anyway. And how much damage is that causing? Quite a lot. I've had some family members, they wanted some help, they went that route, and boy, are they sorry. And that's just not right. And that is so widespread. So, it's hypocritical, but I'm not saying it doesn't need to stop. It's just that things need to be reeled in. And I think if every country and every person just really looked at themselves and focused on themselves, then we'd get a lot further.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's part of the awakening. The awakening has to happen. Of course, all governments are corrupt. Who could honestly, in their right mind, with a 3-digit IQ, not realize that all governments are corrupt? Seriously, yeah, all governments are corrupt. It's the nature of the beast during a Kali Yuga. And we've just only gotten out of it. We've only just switched. And if you don't see the changes, then look a little closer, because there's big changes ahead. Meanwhile, there is a bumpy road. It is going to be a bumpy road. We've been saying this. We don't just step, right out of one yuga, a dark yuga, and go straight into a golden age. So channels that are saying, don't worry, tomorrow everything is going to be perfect, I think they are part of the predictive programming of these corrupt governments when you get down to it. Again, they're trying to catch people in every group. Those that are awakening, well, you're going to have to try to catch them somewhere else, because maybe you could get them to be placid and be happy with the little nuggets that we throw their way. No, we want true freedom and peace for the entire world. And as long as we're divided against each other with these national boundaries, then you're never really going to have peace on earth because, again, religions, they've been utilized to divide, not to bring together. That's the bottom line. Whether the original intent of the people that gave the original thoughts that literally founded these religious movements were totally different than what ended up happening, because again, the system will utilize wonderful teachers that are expounding truths that we could find in all the different religious outlooks. It's a system that swoops in and then basically divides us in the Islamic world into Sunni and Shia. At one point in time, Protestants and Catholics were literally at each other's throats. And of course, Islam and Christianity has been pitted against each other from the very beginning. From the very beginning. Here, Venezuela's defense minister, he is alive and has released a video message calling for anti-imperialist and liberation war against the American empire. Well, who's going to join him? Well, in case you didn't know, there's been a lot of interaction between China and Russia and Venezuela as far as support, military. Military support has been coming into Venezuela constantly from Russia and China, as well as other economic support. Venezuela, after all, has the largest proven oil reserves in the country, in the world, I should say, in the world. So this is a statement from 47. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. The operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. I think his idea, too, of naming Mar-a-Lago, everything to do with water, and, this is the new Atlantis in so many ways. And literally, you had a Masonic document talking about the establishment of the United States as the new Atlantis. It's all symbolic, and it's all part of that bigger plan. And when we see certain people come in that we're not used to, pop in and make comments like, oh, you must be a conspiracy channel. Yeah, come on. You must be a Fed. Of course.
Well, we definitely try to keep the vibe very, very high here. So, no, it's okay. People make their comments, but be respectful when you make the comments. That's what we want people to do in here. We want people to feel safe to be able to speak. But don't be divisive. Just don't be divisive because, yeah, you will get timed out. You will get blocked. All the things. We don't have time for that. We really need to come together now. I think we need to look at the bigger picture. So the last thing we need right now is divisiveness. So there's like a zero tolerance. And, if you can't handle going to a place where you can't be divisive, then don't come here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's the bigger picture. On the other side of all this, there's two possible roads to go down. One leads to a completely totalitarian technocracy, to use David Icke's words. That's where we're heading. Or there is something totally different that the world hasn't seen in perhaps thousands of years. Actual, real, true freedom without any central authority. Does that sound like anarchism? Well, that is the definition of anarchism, is there's no central authority. When you look again, our beloved Susan Donahue, who's been such a supporter from San Francisco for so many years. And by the way, I would be very, very extra aware of earth changes, quote unquote, because again, we understand the technologies that lie out there. To create things like earthquakes. And, again, Russia has come straight out and talked about swamping the UK in a tsunami bomb. This is just something that's been right out there for years. It's not really new news. But the thing is, if it does get to the point where it is that all-out war condition, then we need to be aware of it. and again, put out our best positive vibrations for our loved ones, for ourselves, for everybody. Because we need to recognize, again, that it's through disunity, and it's very Machiavellian, that they keep us at each other's throats. So the average people of Venezuela, yeah, I mean, they're really no different than the average people anywhere. Yeah, they're good. There's, I think, far more good people than there are totally corrupted individuals. Unfortunately, in this world, the totally corrupted individuals are the ones that have risen to the top. So when you see this, it's a pretty wild that they could go in and literally capture alive Maduro and his wife and already have them in the U.S. to face criminal proceedings. It almost feels like it's just too much of a storybook, right? It's like a Tom Clancy novel, you know what I mean?
Indeed. And Max is asking, can we be sarcastic? Yes, absolutely. We need to laugh. We need to joke. We need to be together, just as long as you're not being nasty. It's just too much. The energies are very intense. We have a full moon tonight. People can be really touchy, so we just want to keep everyone feeling good in the room, but definitely laughs are always good.
Yeah, we understand the whole term conspiracy theory was coined by the alphabet soups. That's been documented. So it's a term that was utilized, again, to keep us in the dark and to keep us thinking, oh, you're being silly. Well, that led to so many lives being lost in the bigger scheme of things. So many people making decisions they wouldn't have made. So we have to be very clear about not being led down a dark road again. And we understand that, this system is all about keeping control. This right here is supposedly showing people are very, very happy in Venezuela. I don't think we have anybody from Venezuela that's a regular. We did have one. Yeah, we did have one. I would just love if anybody knows people in Venezuela to share, what they're thinking with all this. And, this is supposedly showing celebrations and honking and cheering. And the reality is, again, whether it's socialism, quote unquote, democracy, communism, what have you, I think most governments are not viewed in a very, very positive way when you get down to it. And we know here in the U.S., I mean, it's just completely divided.
It is. I think we just need to look at everything from our self point of view. It's like, where do we need help inside of ourselves? I think we've seen this coming for a long time with people, the energies just in people's lives in general going up and up and up until something happens in your life, and then everything just explodes and you're kind of sitting around looking around at your life saying, what the heck just happened? And I think now this has made it to where we're at now with all of us. We're all kind of watching this and we're thinking, okay, what's going to happen now? And I think it's going to be a big karma. And when I start going over this solar chart, we're going to understand more about what we have to work on and what we have to work with moving forward, because like I said, it's going to be a landmine out there. It's not going to be easy this year. This year the scores are quite high in some very, very sensitive topics, but there's a way to walk through it, and there's a way to kind of avoid stepping in it.
Max says in 2022 met a Venezuelan visa worker that fled the communist takeover. He said people have no idea. Yeah, it's, a sad condition. I think, again, the world can do so much better than what we've seen. So we're going to have to see what, I'm sure we could pretty much guess what 47 is going to say. It was definitely, it could have been worse, absolutely, from the life lost on civilian population, because it doesn't look like there was massive amounts of civilians that were killed, which is great. That's a positive. Yet at the same time, this absolutely could be the trigger that leads to many countries coming together in blocks, and eventually you have that massive global war, which is already kind of underway. There's no angels in this war. That's the thing to realize. The angels are working on the side of peace, not war.
And we can feed that. We can feed the energy. So while I have everyone here, we're going to do some dings, and we're going to send out some really positive energy out there, because we need it for a positive outcome.
Yeah. So the official statement from the White House is the United States of America has successfully carried out large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. Operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. News conference at 11 a.m. Mar-a-Lago. That's 11 a.m. Eastern time, I'm sure. So that's about 42 minutes from now. And we'll get more details where we might really tend to usually get not much new, because usually you hear everything and more. Again, this is more cheering on channels like this. Let's see. Yeah, they've gone through hell. And whether it was the U.S.'s fault or Maduro's fault, the U.S. for bringing in the embargoes and keeping them blockaded, or Maduro's fault, or a combination of all of the above's fault, anyway, you only hope the best for the average people. These are not average people. And whether we're looking at the BRICS side of things with, again, this is the Venezuelan president next to a Chinese delegation that was just there. Think about this. He was just meeting with a Chinese delegation like hours before he was snatched out of the country. China and Russia have vowed and given military assistance to Venezuela and to Maduro, and holding this Maduro regime in power. This is enormous. The big question is, how is China and Russia going to react?
Yeah, you can only we've seen this coming. We've seen this coming for a very long time. I mean, I think the reaction to me is quite clear. There's karma coming, and we need to focus on ourselves. It's good. Yeah, we look at the news because we need to know what's going on. Don't attach to it. Don't feed it fear. Just look in your own home and make sure you have all the preps that you need, because to me, this was just this is like a bear or, somebody swatting the hornet's nest. I mean, this was a big swat. And now all the bees are going to come out, all the things are going to happen, and we have so much time before we need to get ready. And like I keep saying, with these very highly charged moments that we're going to have this year, there's a way through this to help ourselves walk through it a little bit easier if you just know what the things are, where the landmines are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, here you go. They're giving you translations. Happy New Year, Year of the Horse, etc., etc. These are not average people. No, it's never. These are the ones. It doesn't matter. Again, as I think that we're looking at Simon Bolivar in the background there, again, that led a revolution against colonialism and, led to the separation of these countries in Latin America and their individual nations. But what did that really, really do ultimately? Because it really didn't really do anything but, again, give us the illusion of change with no real change. And this is the thing that we get. We get the illusion of change, but there's not real change. It's like competing mafias, competing mobs. As you see, yeah, the entire air defense of Venezuela built on Russian systems, including the S-300, but it didn't work. Now, is it that the U.S. has far more advanced technology than China or Russia? Or is it just simply that it wasn't supposed to work and we're really watching, in some ways, a theatrical endeavor?
Jen, very valid point. Did they do this because they're trying to get us to look elsewhere? Absolutely. They always do things to try to get us to look elsewhere. And it's a very good point. To me, something that's been ongoing are these certain files that, they want released, they don't want released. And I saw some people that are aware of these files and were personally involved, they're going to step up and they're going to talk about it. And then we have this hit going on, so I think we're at least getting good at looking at all the hands, and so you can, we're getting good at watching the left hand and the right hand. So, and I'm sure they have a couple more hands to play, and it's just a big mess. There's these other, things that we have to look at, and they're rolling out a lot of the new AI, having to show your digital ID in some places now just to get food. And if you're not having a really high social score, if you're going against the big guys, you're not going to eat. And that's unless you can grow your own, and hopefully you can if you have some land, or some friends that do have some land. So these are all things that I think we need to consider moving forward as we roll things out and we kind of unpack what's just happened today. Things that are very valid. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, there's lots here. There's lots here. I had a whole bunch of things going through my mind as Cindy was talking. Again, I think a lot of times as individuals and people in different nations, we have to kind of always be faced with choosing the lesser of two evils. Yes, you could look to China and see their cities, all their technology, their skyscrapers, how much some things have advanced. Their subway systems are so much better than what we have here in the U.S., especially like if you're used to New York subways, boy, you're slumming. And then you go over to some of the mega cities in China or places like Dubai and Singapore, and you're blown away with the technology. And you got to ask yourself, why in the world don't we have technology and infrastructure like that over here? It's because the system chose to use us as a military power, a power projecting force. And that's what the system has done. Now the system's ready to set up shop in China. And what does China have in place? It already has the social credit score in place. Do I want to see China in charge of the U.S. and Canada and New Zealand, Australia, even the U.K.? Hell no. You don't want that coming in because, again, it feels like the only slight resistance we have against Big Brotherism is really coming from within the administration of 47. But, what are they doing then? Are they giving us some hope so that we'll go along with ultimately things? Because there's a lot that's coming out of the 47 administration that's good, and there's a lot that's bad, So there's things that are just, in my mind, atrocities that have been downplayed. And I think to the Middle East, and I think to all the war and contention over there, for instance, and also the opulence. It's just over the top ego, which is what we see from all the leaders of this world. When we look back, and I'm not sure if I still have it up. This is all ego. The Chinese delegation and stuff. I mean, again, you're still walking in Anunnaki-sized buildings with 30-foot ceilings. Well, that was when they were really here because they were the governance. That's the big thing that a lot of people that have had their head in the sand all their lives don't realize. When you look at the structures like this, they were built for giants because the giants were ruling us. And, you might recognize the term Nephilim and Anunnaki maybe even. And Patrilinos, thank you so much for your support. Again, we couldn't do it without you guys.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We appreciate the support to a very high degree. And Kundalini King says, will anyone say anything when these pills are still out on the streets? Exactly. I agree. We've been destroyed, and all of this, so much of this is just a cover, and they're still going to be out there. And I think addiction to certain substances really destroys people, their world, their lives, their families. I mean, it's such a huge, horrible issue. So yeah, absolutely. You know, I wish there was more we could do besides just send energy out there. The energy isn't always going to push it away, but the energy will help when it comes to you working on it locally. That energy will pick up, and certain things can happen in people's lives where they do have to let those addictions go, and they can just be a better person, and their families can be involved again. So I think that's a really good thing to point out. You know, they say they're going in there and they're doing it for this reason and that reason, but is it really? Is it really? I mean, this whole thing is just such a mess, and I think we have to look everywhere and, you know, just keep everything out on the forefront and not forget certain things. So thanks for pointing that out and bringing that up.
Yeah, you know, so, you know, this is just, again, it's there's a big awakening going on. And, you know, I would love to see someday 47 actually show a little humility, but I don't think it's in the character. And I use that word because I think he's acting in character. He's a persona. These are actors on stages, you know. Doesn't mean some of them don't have souls. Some might not have souls. Again, the revelations about clones and how real that is, you know. And if you've done decent research, you'll recognize that cloning has existed for thousands of years on planet Earth, thousands of years. This is all a big illusion that we're watching. But what they're taking us to is the edge of an abyss. Now we know this is coming. We expect it. You know, it's been very, very telegraphed. I do think that this is a key moment, a linchpin moment in history, because I think you'll look back and say, well, when the U.S. did this, then that happened, and this happened over there, and that happened over there. And, you know, well, they started it with this. You know, this is, again, writing the history, and we're watching the history book be written right before our very eyes. You know, again, I do think that this is the year. What, you know, the DEA-GEL numbers, now we all breathe a sigh of relief. We're outside of 2025. What the numbers did was they gave us a forecast. They showed us a baseline of the population of different countries, every country in the world, in 2017. And by the way, 2017 was the year I started evolutionary. Yeah, I started it when the first eclipse happened in the United States. The first eclipse to me that felt like the last period before we would shift Yugas. And we did shift Yugas. But it doesn't mean there isn't going to be a transition period now of the old dying away and going into the history books and the new arising. They want to bring in a technocracy because they know they're going to lose the ability to control humans without having the humans plugged into the hive, so to speak, being assimilated into the Borg. That's the next part in all this. So yeah, this is big. This feels like a key moment in history, a linchpin moment. There's going to be a lot more coming after this. And there's a lot more going on in the world. You have reports indicate Bolivian National Guard officials would be hiding in the Multiplaza shopping center amid the collapse of the regime's control. Yeah, in Bolivia, which is, you know, a couple countries away, which, by the way, they've officially given statements that they repudiate with total force the bombing of the U.S. against Venezuela, brutal imperialist aggression that violates its sovereignty. But, you know, who are we really talking about there? Because you look back to this was November. Bolivia, in less than 24 hours, removed the symbols of socialism from the flag and the national coat of arms, aligned with the U.S. and Malay. Yeah, and seems to have abandoned socialism. It's been confusing, and this goes back for quite a while. Back in 2024, again, you had these periods where it seemed like things were shifting. You had nationwide general strike right at Christmas. Basically, this is the entire world, and I guess that's the point I want to get to, is the governments all around the world, whether they're communist, democratic, or socialist, or anything, fascist, dictatorships, they're all in trouble. They're all in trouble because they've all been lying to us our entire lives.
I see a lot of people making such good points in the room when it comes to addiction, and it's really such a huge, it's a moneymaker, unfortunately. It's something that keeps people in the system. Perpetual customers is what we have. And, ultimately it boils down to we're the ones who have to take control of us, but we need support. We need support around us. We cannot. Sometimes people get to a point they cannot do it on their own. Day of the Cow is asking for prayers, and absolutely make sure you're here at the end and make sure our minds are all together so we can send some healing energy out to your friends. And a 1-year-old is battling with RWV right now. Yes, absolutely, we can do that. And then let's also put the energy out there that maybe something will actually be done. Maybe we will have some truth. Maybe we will discover and learn things that are going to change things for the masses and put us in a different trajectory, because us by ourselves, that's the one thing I realize is when we talk to people, they're all alone in their families. Like their families just don't get it. They're not on board yet. But if something happens big enough, then maybe families will start to get on board. And that's what we need. We need more people to understand that this is a big unfolding. And keep in mind too, that a lot of things, sometimes they have to get a lot worse before they get better. It's just like cleaning out from underneath your bed, cleaning out your closet, cleaning out the junk drawer. You have to throw everything out on the floor, strewn it about so you can look at each thing and figure, do you want to toss this or do you want to keep it? And if you want to keep it, where is its home? Do you have space to keep it? We have to kind of pick through our lives and decide what we want to keep, because when you have clutter all around you, you can't see, you can't think, you can't feel. And you have no direction. And this is what they've done to us, mostly, I think, for purposes of just cluttering our minds so we cannot use our discernment. It doesn't need to be that way. Things can be better. We can clean this up. But I feel we do need each other, though.
Yeah. So, there's so much going on right now. There's so many, these are sort of, they're not even really proxy wars when you get down to it. I mean, they kind of are, but they're kind of, it's all coming together. It's all coming together. We're watching it come together. We were talking about the Iranian protests. The Iran orders banks to prep for system-wide collapse. A secret letter from Iran's central bank has just leaked, and it's nothing but bad news. Every major bank has been told to enter full emergency mode immediately. The letter warns of attacks, blackouts, and loss of control scenarios. Banks are being ordered to secure their data, activate backup systems, even keep money moving if everything collapses. It isn't a drill. So, but the thing is, the same thing is going on here in the U.S. It's a house of cards. They just printed tons of money. And again, I saw a great tweet, and it was, if the governments could print as much money as they need, why do they collect taxes? Right? I mean, think about it. It's to keep us poor and them with ample, and to keep us from ever having real power. Whether you're talking ruble, yen, or dollar, pound, etc., euro, they're all worthless pieces of paper. In reality, the gold and the silver is being hoarded. Like 65%, as what I heard yesterday, of the world's silver is in the hands of China. an enormous amount of the world's gold is in the hands of China. China has been designated to be the new United States for the next era. That's the best way to put it. They want to shift power to China because China has the system already in place that they want the entirety of the world to be under. So from that point of view, we certainly don't want to see China take over the Western world, so to speak. Yet at the same time, we certainly don't want to see what we saw, in all these regimes, not just Biden, not just Obama, but also, going back to what we saw with the Bushes and, even beyond that. They've all been corrupt. They've all been part of this system. And it really needs to change. We need to think outside of all the labels they've been giving us. So will the Iran system collapse? Probably, but it'll probably collapse here in the U.S. too. So that's why we have to do whatever we can. I was sticking it in my mind and I put it in my notes. It was what was that? It was Section 101, I remember, where the government's already put in place legally everything they need to do to take and confiscate our silver. And not just silver, they could confiscate more. The Defense Production Act, Section 101 of the Defense Production Act, just basically says when we're in a wartime scenario, which we will be shortly, we already are, then they can do what they did before. They did take everybody's gold. You could go to jail if you tried to keep gold for yourself. And they may do this with gold and silver and other things as well.
So I want to just go over one of these themes that we have going on for 2026 while we're talking about that. And, mind you, the translations are kind of weird. One of the themes, these two that I've been looking at are both, they kind of sound a little bit difficult, but just understand that this means change. So one of them is noted as imprisonment. It translates to imprisonment for one of the bigger themes for this year for the United States. And the other one is death. But you want to look at this not like it's literal. So when you look at imprisonment, you want to talk about feeling things that are going to feel very, very restricted. So the United States this year has a very high score, and the score can go from 0 to above 50. And the score for imprisonment it's over 40. So what we're looking at this year is like systematic restriction, containment through law, policy, or structure, binding conditions that are difficult to exit, increased enforcement, oversight, or compliance, a feeling of being boxed in as a nation. So that's what I mean when I say imprisonment. That's the best translation that they could find. So it is in Cancer. So when we're looking at the Saham, we have to look at what house it's in. So Cancer is in the homeland. It's public mood, it's security, it's protection, and how we're going to look at how it manifests. So restrictions framed as care, safety, protection, patriotism. We have to keep that in mind. That's what they're going to frame it as when they kind of continue to, tighten this noose with the technology that we have. So emotional justification for control, policies tied to homeland, borders, housing, food, or internal security, collective emotional pressure rather than overt force. So they're going to try to convince us basically that this is good for us. And how are they going to convince us? Mercury is the lord of this. So we look at what does Mercury mean? It means legal language, contracts, paperwork, regulatory systems, court filings, media narratives, data tracking, documentation. So we put all of these things together and we realize that I also saw that Saturn has a very strong influence on this theme this year. So what is Saturn? It's long-term consequences. It's slow release. There's no quick exit. It's structural endurance and karmic accountability themes. So we have to look at this as the United States has an activated Saham of imprisonment this year. But this is not about people going to jail. It's about the systems tightening. Laws, contracts, regulations, and structures that bind the nation through legal and administrative means. So we need to look at that and realize when we see contracts and when we're starting to hear businesses say, well, this is for your own good, we need to keep an eye on that and just make sure we step carefully and double check the fine print. I think that's another theme for 2026. Double check your fine print. So very important. So, and then the other theme being death. I'll just go over these two because I don't want to overwhelm. But death really is basically definitive endings, irreversible closures, structures that cannot continue, the end of a cycle, not a pause, the end of a cycle. So that's what they mean when they say death. So something reaches its final form and must dissolve. So we're looking at laws, institutions, policies, economic systems, power arrangements, long-standing national narratives. Again, Cancer placement. So we're looking at change in the homeland, the public emotional identity, security structures, what makes us feel safe, and endings tied to domestic policy, shifts in how the nation defines safety and care, emotional disillusionment, old protections no longer working, and the public realizing something cannot be saved. So we're going to face some things. And these are very, very high scores for this chart that I'm doing. It is called a Varshafala chart. And like I said earlier, you can do this with people. And I wanted to do it for the United States. And this is what I have come up with. So this ending is going to be slow. It's going to be inevitable. And it's going to be karmic. That's the thing. It's going to be karmic. They're going to use things like, oh, the system's aging out. It doesn't work. You look, the structure is not working. It's collapsing. It's not going to hold up. So I think we just need to be mindful of how these things are going to come into our lives and how are we going to navigate them. What is the best way for us? I keep going around and feeling like I just need to double check the contracts that I signed this year and look at the rules. When they say, do you agree to these terms and policies if you buy this thing? This year, read the terms and policies. I hate to say it, but we need to. That's what I think.
There's a lot there, yeah, and you know, I it's going to be, this is going to take a little while. This is going to take a little while, but we're entering that next phase. And like I had shared before, I think for us that are sitting here in the U.S., which is like 70-something% of you guys, you know, it's going to be bumpy through 2028, maybe a little bit past that. But the bumpiness is increasing. I think there's a lot of hope, though, tons of hope. And I think it can stop earlier, depending on awakening and how much we can awaken people. And that includes help from outside sources.
So this is definitely a big bump in the road. And I've always often thought about feather brick truck. You know, I mean, life gives us feathers. If something's not working well, it'll touch you with a feather. If you don't get it, you're going to get the brick. And life is going to hit you with a brick. And if you still don't get it, there's going to be a truck come along and say, hey, you need to make some changes. Things need to change. This is the same for us, the U.S. And I'm looking at all the Sahams clear until 2030. And you guys, 2030, we're going to put that on Patreon because I don't feel safe talking about it. But 2030 is going to be more difficult. So really, this is time to get ready. Are things going to change for the better eventually? Yes. But it's going to be slow. It's going to be, like I said, there's a Saturn aspect on this. Saturn is very slow in making its changes, but it's very deliberate. And those changes have great meaning. So I think we still have the ability to control what's going on. At least we know what the theme is going to be. That's good. We have stuff to work with.
Yeah, and then we have this. And this is from yesterday's live that Christoph did, the Polish psychic. He's been again used by the Polish authorities to help find missing people and those type of cases. He's very gifted. Again, you see, he's not going to be 100% accurate because timelines are always changing. But this I thought was probably the most interesting thing I saw. He said, people will be talking about this all over the world, right? Powerful object will appear, and I have this on really fast because this is how I watch things, double speed. Powerful object will appear in the sky, night sky, which will have 3 lights. It will emanate 3 lights from 3 places. Then he shifts and says he will only appear, but almost the whole world will be talking about it. So he gets these visions, it's different than what Cindy gets. Cindy gets more like talking, usually coming straight through, like hearing a voice. I get more of like knowings and yeah, more like visions, but not like on Christoph's level. So, no one was wrong here. In 2026, there will be loud talk about, he goes on to talk about effective cure for cancer, and then he goes on to talk also about the world war, because he does see it beginning in earnest. But I thought it was really interesting that some strange sort of object, like a UAP, some sort of ship or something, is going to appear in the sky with 3 lights that's going to get the whole world's attention. People all over the world will be talking about it. As far as the World War, he says Europe is going to be building its army, its military, very quickly, getting prepped very quickly, and also the fact that what we're witnessing right now truly is the beginning of WW3 and an all-out war that's going to have different battlefields developing in different parts of the world, and countries taking sides. There's some mistranslations in there. It says 2016, but 2026. People taking to the streets because the economy is going to be collapsing. More in the Western countries, more in Europe and the United States. Economic reality is going to change. He sees 8 years of hardship, or he sees the governments telling us that it's going to take 8 years to climb out of the economic conditions. I do think things could change more rapidly than that. It depends again how much people are going to awaken. But yeah, the World War, it will start in 2026, and states are going to group together. And this grouping, I think what we've seen, and he did this before the Venezuela thing happened, and he's also been giving this information for many months now. Many months. I think, like when he was talking about cure for cancer coming out, I think this is going to be a weird time because we're going to have the carnage of war and, the death and destruction that all that brings. Yet at the same time, we're going to be realizing things, awakening to new possibilities and maybe old possibilities, like old ways of taking care of our health that has been kept from us for so long, as well as new technologies too.
And I love what JW said. He said, I'm hopeful about the future because I continue to meet more and more folks who live with peace and love in their hearts and lives, and less of those stuck in anger and hate and rage. I agree. I am running across people who might be going through some very, very difficult things, but they're not stuck there. They're not living in that difficult thing. In fact, that difficult thing makes them a better person. It just gets them to try to make sure that not other people don't have to go through that difficult thing. I do believe heart chakras are absolutely opening, and they're just going to get bigger. When we go through difficult times and we come together like we are now, and we're making a difference. We're absolutely making a difference when you come into these lives. And, we share the difficulties, but we also deal with the difficulties gently, because it's not like we can avoid them. We can't pretend they're not there. They're there. They're absolutely there. But our response is our responsibility. And that's what I keep seeing in chat too. We have choices to make. It's up to us. How are we going to move forward? How are we going to deal with this? If you want to deal with it with hate and anger and rage, well, that has consequences. That releases those nasty chemicals in your body, and it puts off a very nasty vibration. And guess what? What you put out there, it comes back. It comes back to you. And the science behind that is becoming so relevant. The science behind tuning forks, it is so very relevant. If you have two tuning forks that are the same hertz, they move each other, that they resonate with each other. They make that signal stronger. So if you have good tuning forks at 432 and they're resonating together, guess what? You're sending out a lot of love. If you have two kind of harder tuning forks, guess what? That's sending out a lot of hate. And it's like we're all being tuned to a much higher degree now, which is good.
Which is true, because last night, we woke up, and we woke up exactly when the whole Venezuela thing was happening. And I was tempted to go look at the news, but I didn't. I said, no. I only slept 3 hours or whatever, and no, I'm going to try to go back to sleep. But I knew something was happening. The disturbances in the force, it's getting so much easier to feel, sense, and read those. Our abilities are changing. They're growing exponentially. So again, those that are awakened, they're going to be impossible. Well, you could control at the end of a gun, but they're going to be impossible to fool.
So Mega Black says, struggling builds character. It not only builds character, it is so necessary. When we look at, a butterfly coming out of its cocoon, you don't dare help it. You don't dare help it. You want to, because it's such a struggle, but that struggle is making its veins work. That struggle is building muscle for those wings to be able to fly. Chicks, when they make their little peck, that little hole, you don't want to help them. They need to have that struggle. That struggle is what brings the expansion. And all of this struggle that we're going to be going through in the next 4 years is going to bring expansion. It's just a matter of how are we going to react to it? How are we going to respond to it? It's very necessary, but with struggle comes beauty. Absolutely. Pain is our greatest teacher. It's true. It's can be really horrible. Not saying it's not horrible. I've gone through this. I rewired my own brain to realize every time I felt pain, my body was healing. I had to, because there was no way around it. But I did. And there's more things that I'm going to do too. As I continue to learn and as we continue to face things head on, life gets better and better and better.
Yeah, and I do think what's going to happen is you're going to have people coming together in little family units, and whatever those are named as is still to be determined. But breakaway communities. I do see that happening. I do think that that's inevitable. You're going to have people that just will not go along with the system, but want to be in peace, and they are going to support each other. Just the feelings that we have here, we know so many of you guys on a deep personal basis. Again, we've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of people over the years. And we know how well most of you guys would get along together. You're so alike, and you see the world in a unique prism, but at the same time, you have the same basic core values. And so, we could work together to create these new pockets that come together, and probably in various locations. We have a few family members that have expressed that desire over the years. And I think the coming years, from 2026, now we're in 2026, to 2028, and then into 2030 are going to be the foundation points of that.
Pinch runner, that's a good point. They will treat breakaways like Waco. I think we have to look at this in a very realistic, grounded way. We can't just think that, oh, peace and love and nothing bad is going to happen. No, it definitely helps when you're putting that piece out there. It definitely helps, but it's not the cure-all for everything. So we have to be ready for things like that, unfortunately.
And when it's happening organically in this era, it's going to be different than in the past because you're going to have a much higher percentage of the population that's choosing to go that route. In fact, I think, I don't know. I really don't know if it's going to be a 50-50 split, 70-30, 30-70, but it's going to be a big chunk of people that simply will not go along with the system. So I don't see how they can control us all. Ultimately, they'll do their best. They will.
Mm-hmm. They will. And also, Pinch Runner says, you just, most normal humans want peace. And yes, we do. So if there are people out there coming in just with their daggers just to cause disruption, no, we don't have a tolerance for that. We don't have time for that. We don't have time for the divisiveness. So yeah, bring your point of view, bring your understanding, bring your belief system, but don't bring the against part of it. Just say, hey, this is what I've learned in my life. Take a look at this. And you know what? If somebody's curious, they might look and maybe it'll change them for the better. But bring everything you have in a positive way. It's like a big game of show and tell. Hey, look at this pretty shiny rock I found. Isn't this way cool? Why can't we bring information to each other that way? Why do we always have to say be against the belief system? I personally I don't like the negativity. If I don't have to deal with it, I'm not going to. That doesn't mean I'm never going to deal with it. That doesn't mean I put my head in the sand. I mean, sometimes I have to adjust myself. If something really nasty comes my way, I have to adjust. I have to take a look. And it's like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And I just do it. Sometimes there's no magic behind it. It's like sometimes things are messy. Life is messy. Love can be very, very messy. But it's like, how much of that stress do we allow in our lives? We have a choice.
Yes, absolutely. So, there's a different scale that you rate energies on when we're talking about, normal human body and, at the same time, different fabrics is what they're looking at here. Heidi Yellen conducted a study on the frequency of fabrics, found that the human body is a signature frequency of 100. However, when dead, a dying human body has a frequency of around 15. Polyester fabrics rate 15 as well. The system knows this. Again, the system does all it can to shorten human lifespan. That's the bottom line. And they want us living short lives where we don't have a long enough lifespan to gain the wisdom to understand that what we're witnessing is all just illusion, and it's a control system.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's the control system. There are workarounds, but life is going to go on. I mean, this is an end to a lot of things, but life is going to go on. And when it comes to all of the themes that are going to be happening this year, all of the change and all of the restrictions, at least we know it's coming. Like, at least we can see the Mack trucks, and it's how are we going to navigate that?
Layering raw onion slices with honey overnight. The sulfur fights infection. The enzymes lose mucus. Better than most store-bought syrups. An old remedy. Real science. Safe for kids, too. Yeah, absolutely. There's everything we need is in nature, in the form that we need it, because it has natural buffers. What science does is it isolates and changes things so that things can be patented, so that they can make money and profits off of it, and thus keep us in control.
Mm-hmm. And we need prayers and healing going out to someone's pups, and we can absolutely do that. And there's a lot of alternatives that we can do too. So We've done a lot of videos on that, on alternative healing methods. That's what we do. We're not doctors, but we have seen a lot of things that do work, and we practice those things that do work.
Yeah, and this is a doctor that I've been following more recently, Dr. Paul Saladino. He's saying basically contaminated fruits and veggies, wash them in baking soda and filtered water. And that'll help to pull some of the toxins. He says don't add vinegar to the mix. He said most of the pesticides are very acidic. And so if you use something alkaline like baking soda, you could draw it up and out of the substance. He's a wealth of great information. I find him very motivational too. Dr. Paul Saladino, he has his own YouTube channel.
Yeah, this is really good stuff. Use the baking soda. Don't use them together. So, I mean, there's all kinds of really good little tidbits that we can.
Food grade hydrogen peroxide too.
I would say food grade hydrogen peroxide. Rinse it really well. I mean, all of these things. Do your own research, because when it comes to alternative healing, there's these little nuances that you might have going on in your life that you need to just double check.
I think
the antennas. Oh my gosh. Let's all put on our copper hats. I mean, that's probably a really good idea in a certain era. Why not now too?
Yeah, when we look to these crazy crowns that royalty would wear, I'm not sure if this is Thailand, perhaps it feels like Thailand. I think, again, what we're looking at is the knowledge that we could draw more of the ether and thus more of the life force in through the crown chakra into the entirety of the body. These look like swords here. Cindy is starting to begin her project of making some wands from scratch, as we have some holly on the property that we're utilizing, and going to be making wands from scratch just as a fun project. And when she gets enough of them made, then perhaps we'll offer them to you guys. But human ether collectors, I wouldn't doubt it. Not at all. Look at these late pillars coming on down. We've seen the red sprites. I know Dave Adapt 2030 has done a bunch of really, really good videos, fascinating videos lately. And he was showing the red sprites too, which we have shown. Again, light is consciousness. Light is information. Light is gnosis. Light is everything, ultimately. Light and sound together give us the manifest universe.
That's the real magic there. And Karma Doc said, I saved a bunch of trees I thought were dead with copper wire and crystals. I love that, because, you can get laughed at by so many people, but then it turns around and it works. It might take a minute. It might take a little bit of time, but this is where the magic's at. It's always been there, and that's why I say there is no veil. There never was a veil. We just simply weren't told certain things, and they're very careful not to let certain information out. I think it's not the lack of information that keeps us suppressed. It's the hordes of secrets that they keep to themselves and they don't release. So when I find something that works, you bet I get on the horn and I just tell everybody, because it's not fair. We shouldn't have to pay like $5,000 to figure out how to really truly heal the cell and heal your thyroid. These things should be out there for everyone. Yes, it takes a minute. There should be some sort of energy exchange. Absolutely. But it shouldn't cost so much. That's just not fair. These things don't have to be expensive. Aw, thank you, Feel Free. We appreciate that a lot. And that helps us keep going. So it helps us get the information out there to other people, so we don't have to go find another job or do another thing. And we appreciate that, because we want to be here for you guys. It's what drives us. This is what gets us up every morning. This is why we exercise every day. This is why our routine is so clean. This is why we do the things, because we want to put the best vibe out there possible for everybody. Thank you.
Oh, is that an adorable face or what? So, Karma Doc, please do let us know when you want to do a show, because Karma Doc has done shows with people and been on different channels and out there sharing her wealth of information. So it's long overdue that we do a show together. And it'd be awesome anyway. It's awesome being with you guys. We will keep you guys informed. Thank you for joining us on this morning live. It's an interesting morning indeed. Cindy, do you have?
Yes, I do. So we want to say a thank you to Feel Free. We want to say a thank you to Feel Free, and I know we had others that donated, and oh my gosh, I feel horrible. I did not write that down, but thank you so much for all of your guys' support in every way, shape, or form. Please do the thumbs up. It keeps us in the algorithms. They are desperately trying to squash us, and we just keep working harder because you guys allow for that. So thank you so much. We're going to do some dings. And like I said earlier, please have a happy thought. This is going to be a very thoughtful prayer and a very thoughtful energy push that we're going to do right now. What you think is what you're going to manifest. So we are going to magnetize your energy field. Yes, it's only a few minutes, but it's still going to have some change. It's still going to help you manifest things. Usually the longer the session, the more magnetized you are, but a few minutes with all of us is going to make a difference. So have a happy thought. Whoever needs prayers, have them in your heart and mind. And let's say a prayer for this country, because we are all going to need some help navigating what we have coming for this year. Here we go. I just want to say Rama has come to join us. Yes, Rainbow Warriors, Vanessa. Absolutely. Every single one of us. Thank you so much, Mario. We love you all so very, very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping us push this energy field out. And thank you, JW, for 5 cups of coffee. We appreciate that. We also take donations over on Ko-Fi. We really appreciate your guys' support. Keep coming back, and we'll keep doing this. Thank you.
As always, guys, Loka Samasta, Suki no Bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my thoughts, words, and deeds contribute to that happiness and freedom. As always, Source bless and Namaste.